Cannabis.
Sativa.
Dope.
Indica.
Weed.
Leaf.
This is Leaf Life.
All things cannabis for all people.
Now, here are your hosts, Ricker and the Bearded Lorax.
We publish a magazine called The Leaf that is available in print in 13 states at your local cannabis retailer and also available online at leafmagazines.com. My name is Mike Ricker, and I am your host of Leaf Life with my co-host Wes Abney, also known as the Bearded Lorax.
I speak for the trees.
And of course, there's Stashley.
The token female.
And Mary J. White.
The smoking female.
Broadcasting from Leaf HQ in Seattle, the United States is now sandwiched to the north and south by countries who recognize the importance of cannabis on the federal level. And that is because last month, our neighbors on the other side of the southern border approved a bill to legalize recreational cannabis, even though polls showed that approximately 2/3 of the residents opposed the bill, with one notable person calling it a political quote-unquote fad. This is legal cannabis in Mexico.
It's time to migrate back to legal cannabis.
In our first segment, we'll discuss how did it happen. And in the second segment, ending the cartel. But before we get educated, we've got to get medicated. So let's get stoned. All right. Wes, this is my favorite part of the show. Don't be hurt by that because I know you wax philosophic and throw pearls, but god damn, do we love cannabis.
Yes, we do.
And now it's time to meet this show's Greg the Guinea Pig.
Hi, I'm Greg, and Ricker used to try his weed out on me. But now it's someone else's turn to be the guinea pig.
All right, now this show's Greg the Guinea Pig is Claudia Della Mora. She's the co-founder and managing partner at Black Legend Capital, an investment and advisory firm based out of Los Angeles and an expert in international cannabis legalization. Claudia, welcome to Leaf Life.
Thank you.
Oh, look at her. She's Italian, Wes. She's got an accent. Be ready for that accent, Wes.
I love it.
Yeah,
You guys, she's classing up the joint. Just saying. You're looking good, Claudia.
Oh,
Thank you.
So, Claudia, you're going to get high. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing beforehand, but it's time to find out what you're going to be smoking by spinning Stash's wheel and finding out what's in Stash's stash.
And now, what's in Stash's stash? Will it land on the nug jug, the dab saucer, the vape cart, the edible, the infused drink, the inhaler,
I know,
or the suppository?
Suspense. It sounds like a zipper opening, Wes. We got to do something about that.
Sometimes it's a zipper.
Yeah.
Bag. It's
Right.
my stash bag.
It's a
But
bag.
sometimes it's not. Sometimes it could be a latch.
Gotcha.
I mean, really, it could be anything.
Depends on what purse she's carrying there, Wes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Claudia's ready. She flew all the way from Los Angeles just to be on Leaf Life. Thanks for coming up here.
Really?
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, we're very delighted to have you, and it's going to be even more delightful when you're high.
Oh, great.
Stash, pack up that Puffco, and what do we got anyways?
I got a dab saucer today from Good Titrations. It is a company from Alaska, and this is God's Gift, which is one of my favorite indicas.
Nice.
We love good titration.
Good Titrations.
Ooh. Sweet sensation. Mary J. White and I know that song, right?
Yeah, because we old.
Yeah. What is it normally? It's good vibrations.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead and fire up that Puffco stash, and let's let Claudia just get a taste of that.
All right.
Okay. Now she's pulling the Puffco to the mouth, and she's gonna take a little toke. Just look at that, would you?
Boy, she even looks good doing that.
Yeah. She's a good-looking woman, Mary J. White.
No.
You know, in fact, you know what? There's 3 really good-looking women here at this table right now, Wes.
We're outnumbered.
You lucky bastards.
We're out. No, totally. I know. And what do you think? Is it nice?
It's nice, considering replacing the joint with this.
Oh, better than what you would get in Italia?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Why, Italian weed sucks?
Well, you know, in Italy, theoretically, it's illegal, right, to buy recreational cannabis. But people still use it,
Well,
obviously.
of course they do.
It's decriminalized.
Oh,
so
good.
At least
It is decriminalized?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Well, that's a step in the right direction, Wes.
Yeah.
Good.
Medicinal cannabis in Italy is legal, but again, like with many countries, it's legal on the paper, right? There's no regulations yet.
Yeah. So if I go to Florence and I'm, I have my vape cart and I'm walking down the street inhaling, am I going to get arrested?
Well, no, because it's decriminalized, so you're not going to get arrested. You might get a ticket, or if you get lucky, you can run into the general. The military is the only entity in Italy with the license to actually cultivate THC. So if the general likes you, he might just, go out with you.
Sounds like the United States, Wes, equally as corrupt.
Pretty much.
Now that we've been educated on Italy, let's talk about Mexico. 2/3 of the country's residents don't want it legalized. So how and why did this happen?
Yeah, so this goes back to the history of cannabis in Mexico and in Latin America. And I really think that it's very similar. I've been studying all of these countries from Mexico to, other countries in Latin America. And the cannabis industry kind of started back there in the 1600s with the Spaniards and during the colonial times, right? Yeah. So cannabis was used for industrial hemp and for food, for religious, reasons as well, for medicinal reasons. And so the same thing in other countries in Latin America, up to more or less the 1900s. Okay. With the prohibition, the prohibition from the United States, of course, led by the cotton industry and the textile industry. And then finally, we had the 3 United Nations Convention on narcotic drugs against it. And then all the way to the 80s, when actually Mexico and Latin America became the biggest exporter of illicit drugs.
So a lot of illicit drugs, obviously, coming out of South America. And we'll talk in the second half about ending the cartel. But what about Mexico? I mean, that seems like a big issue down there. Not seems like, it's always been a big issue.
So we have the Guadalajara cartel and the narcos, right? And they continue producing and smuggling, for recreational use, this cannabis. Then at the same time, more or less, we have Colombia with Pablo Escobar. And also, don't to forget, Pablo Escobar started with marijuana as well. Only later moved into the cocaine business. And this is also why there's such a similar sentiment in Colombia for regulating, cannabis on a recreational way because of this history. Although I've been studying this well, and it looks like the cartel in Colombia is really not interested in the cannabis industry, still interested in the cocaine industry. Actually, some people from the cartel in Colombia have been legally investing money into the cannabis industry. Very different story from Mexico. Mexico, as we know, the narcos actually base their revenue on smuggling of marijuana, and therefore there's been a lot of back and forths, in the government in terms of legalizing medicinal. First, got decriminalized in 2015, then medicinal cannabis got legalized in Mexico in 2017, but no rules yet. Okay. So what happened, there's a lot going on in the last few years. From 2013 till 2019, there's been kind of the rebirth of the cannabis industry in Latin America. Okay. With Uruguay being the pioneer, of course, the first country in the world to legalize it recreationally back in 2013. Many developments have happened after that. And then most of the countries in Latin America have decriminalized and then legalized on the medicinal level. So I think that Mexico has been waiting to set up rules in the last 3 years, really learning from the mistakes of Colombia. Okay, what were the mistakes of Colombia? So Colombia decriminalized the cannabis in 2012, then legalized the medicinal wise in 2016. And ever since then, there's been a huge amount of money poured in the country, especially from Canadian LPs, hundreds and hundreds of millions, the biggest companies going there. And there's been a huge loss of investments, right? So this big foreign direct investment, FDI, into the country that really didn't provide a good return on investment. That's because regulations were not established on time. Licenses were not issued. So at the moment, for example, in Colombia, cannabis is legal on the medicinal level, right? But mostly their business plan was to build this industry for the foreign market. And in their minds, they were geared towards Europe, okay, for the first few years. So that's where all that money was supposed to go. Why? Because, of course, the United States is pretty independent and there's huge regulations to import. You can import CBD with less than 0.2% THC, of course, but Canada is a closed market. EU caused a huge problem for Colombia because Germany, which is leading the regulations in Europe, requires EU GMP certification, which is very costly in Colombia.
And GMP is general manufacturing products.
Correct.
Standards, so you have to be at a certain standard to even get a license to produce a product.
Exactly. For EU specifically, which is different from, Health Canada, for example, or FDA for United States. So Canada, instead, which has been the main, pioneer country, they have built big facilities, EU GMP certified, and they're the ones currently exporting into Europe, okay?
Wow.
So what happened in Colombia, the problem is that they did not focus on developing a domestic market, mostly on a foreign, market. They still cannot export flour, so they're still waiting to get rules or permits to export flour. Only ingestible and extracts, right? Mm-hmm. Now, about that, there's the problem, as I said, because Canada is a closed market, right? EU requires all these big regulations, so only very few companies could actually comply with that. I think Clear Leaf is the only company in Colombia that received EU GMP certification. And from an Eastern European country, not even Germany. So all the other companies, including Farmacielo, including Canopy, they didn't. They've just been spending a lot of money. On top of that, what about the domestic market? Domestic market was not developed in Colombia. This is what Mexico wants to do. Well, Colombia has 50 million people, okay? Mexico has over 120 million people, plus big tourism. Very different from Colombia.
Very different.
Now, in a little bit, I'm going to switch to Brazil, because Brazil is going to become the biggest importer right now and one of the biggest sources of income for these countries. Brazil has over 200 million people, okay? So going back to Colombia, domestic market was not developed. They're literally dividing, products 0.2% THC. If it's above that, you need a prescription from the doctor, which is called a magistral formula. And the patient has to get a prescription from the doctor and then go into a compounding pharmacy in order to get the product compounded for the patient. Now, compounding pharmacy also requires special, permit, and there's only 3 or 4 compounding pharmacies in the entire country.
So basically, they don't want anybody getting high.
Well, forget about recreational. So Colombia, of course, is a legal recreational cannabis, and for THC production, which is legal, but only on the medicinal level, okay, you have to register the company with INVIMA. Now, what is INVIMA? INVIMA is the FDA of Colombia.
Oh, okay.
And get a quota. Guess what? Only very few companies at the moment were able to register with INVIMA and obviously get a quota.
Right.
Okay.
So they made it basically so impossible to get a license or to get the ability to produce it and export it, and they didn't think about their own people, that basically the program didn't work or isn't really working in Colombia, right?
Exactly.
So you're saying that Mexico looked at all those failures, looked at the import-export model, realized that Mexico already was exporting a lot of weed illegally, and wanted to focus on the domestic market?
Yes. So Mexico, for sure, would be a big player in the export market as well, right? Because of cheap labor, because of the proximity to the United States, and the trade relationships with Europe already, okay? But there's a lot of money to be made out of the domestic market, 120 million people. Plus, if this follows the trend of, United States, about 10% of that population will be a recurrent patient, right? So we're talking about, Mexico considers probably with this legalization of recreational to make above $1.2 billion in tax revenues per year, save $200 million in revenues, for policing, obviously, and add revenue to the global market. Where figures say that it would be above, it would take the recreational market, global recreational market, by 2024 above $100 billion.
So it has nothing to do with morality or whether you're a good person if you smoke weed or a bad person if you smoke weed.
Yeah.
But it really is about just figuring out the systems and how they're going to profit from it and the way things are currently. Is that right?
So yes, actually, okay. So there's the tax reasons, right? And there's, social, moral reasons, but also there is the ethical reasons of, related to the health of, people. As a matter of fact, so what happened is this. In 2017, it got legalized medicinal cannabis, right, in Mexico. In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional all this prohibition of the use of cannabis for patients and pushed and forced the Supreme Court pushed Congress to legalize it and create rules by April 2020. Wow. Okay. So what happened at the end of 2018? They issued some licenses. They issued 21 licenses. Now, these 21 licenses, few months later, got revoked or kind of revoked because they were not in line with what Congress really wanted to accomplish. Nonetheless, some of these companies retain some of these 21 licenses. These are the only currently, operating companies that are operating legally, in Mexico.
Wow.
And of course, the licenses will at some point, expire. Now, beyond these 21 licenses, everything else is a gray area, including hemp, industrial hemp. Think that industrial hemp has been a big, source of income in Latin America, right? Especially in Chile. And now also cultivating industrial hemp is becoming illegal because there's a gray area between hemp and CBD.
And what it all can be turned into. But it seems like it's not about, like in America, legalization happened because a bunch of people like me were like, we want to smoke weed and not go to jail for it. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like Mexico, specifically in Latin America in general, they're building the systems already, expecting legalization, and then they're getting ready and the people are just going to receive the benefit from it. But it seems like the governments are more active in setting up the regulations, setting up a process, and thinking about what they're doing versus kind of the state-by-state, hodgepodge version of legalization that the U.S. has.
Exactly. Although U.S. has a very special medicinal type of regulation, which is unrelated to our health insurance or FDA because of, each state is independent. Instead, in these countries, in these Latin American countries, I see that when we're talking about pharma, they really want clinical trials.
And they really want people to be able to call cannabis medicine and treat it like medicine and have it be a respected thing, which is beautiful. And I think that, power to the people is what cannabis freedom is all about. And especially with Latin America, getting the power out of the hands of the cartel, which we'll be talking about next, is the big step. And I think a hot button issue for us up here in the States.
Really?
Well, in our second segment, we'll discuss ending the cartel. And speaking of Latin, Wes, it's time for Claudia to play Know Your Latin.
Oh, nice.
Hola, senors and senoritas. It's time to see how well you know your Latin.
No, it's
Oh, no, not Latino. Just Latin. This is Ciote Latina. Know your Latin.
All right, so Claudia, you're Italian. I figured you would know Latin terminology. I'm going to give you a Latin term, and you have to tell me the English equivalent.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Here we go.
I studied Latin, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Long time
Got
ago.
a real gamer here, Wes.
She's smart.
Number one, ad astra per aspera.
What? What?
Ad astra per aspera.
I think he's making that up.
No, that's Latin.
Oh.
Are you talking about pear and apples?
No, ad astra is through adversity to the stars. Oh, that's a wrong answer.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, here we go.
Ask me something easier.
Omnia vincit amor.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something now.
That's
Yes,
something about
okay.
love. That's love in there. All right? That's
She doesn't
love.
know any Latin. It means love conquers all. You were right, Mary. Let's give a correct answer to Mary there. Yes. And number 3, sursum est ignis. No.
Ignore the assholes.
Right, sorry.
Probably.
Fire it up, lady. Okay, well, looks like she's got another spin of stashes. We'll come up. We'll find what she's going to be hitting next and talking about ending the cartel. Hey, at the end of this show, you'll get another episode of Stony Baloney. In fact, get all the Leaf content you're looking for at leafmagazines.com, including every Leaf Life podcast show. Also, look us up on Instagram at Leaf Life Podcast. All right, get ready for round 2 as we're coming back to talk about the legalization of cannabis in Mexico and ending the cartel. And we'll get another spin of Stash's wheel and kick it all off with another episode of Not for Nothing. Leaf Life continues in just a moment.
These products have intoxicating effects and may be habit-forming. Marijuana can impair concentration, coordination, and judgment. Do not operate a vehicle or machinery under the influence of this drug. There may be health risks associated with consumption of this product. For use by adults 21 and older. Keep out of the reach of children.
Welcome back to Leaf Life. In just a moment, we'll dive deeper into Mexico's legalization of cannabis and how this affects the cartel. We'll also spin Stash's wheel to see what products this show's Greg the Guinea Pig is going to be trying next. But first, it's time for Not for Nothing.
Well, not for nothing. I couldn't help but think it. Not for nothing.
Yeah, so, this is kind of an Italian thing, so don't be put off, Claudia, but it's American Italian, by the way,
New Yorker.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. She knows what's up, Wes. By the way, this has absolutely nothing to do with cannabis.
Right.
So, okay.
This is just a little something.
Mary J. White.
There's a lot of different kinds of healing, right? We have physical healing when you go to the doctor.
Sure.
Well, if you're in South Africa and you need some spiritual healing,
Yes.
I would recommend Pastor Penelope. He's a guy.
Okay.
Now, Pastor Penelope, the way he heals you is he stands on top of you. You lay down flat on the floor. He stands on top of you, and then he farts.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, he says it started with the Master Jesus Christ when he stepped on top of Peter. He says, if there's no harm, you don't have to say anything. If there is harm, that means I'm getting the bad spirits out of you.
Really?
Yes.
Exorcise the demons.
Yeah. And apparently he says pastors should practice what's in the Bible. And apparently, because Jesus stepped on top of Peter, this guy will step on top of you and fart.
Oh, why are you looking at Claudia? I don't think she likes this story very much.
Laughing at me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was thinking you were telling me to go to South Africa, especially Lesotho, where is legal cannabis.
I love that you know that.
That sounds
so
way more fun than Pastor Penelope's program.
You're right. Okay, never mind.
Has absolutely nothing to do with cannabis, by the way.
Zero.
Absolutely nothing.
Not for nothing.
Not for nothing.
All right, let's get another spin of Stash's wheel and see what Claudia. Man, you're a real pro. You got all high and spoke all elegantly
I know.
like that.
Big
Articulate.
words. Yeah.
Wow. In another language that is not her native language. That's very impressive, Claudia. Stash, let's spin that wheel. All right.
Oh, we got another dab saucer.
Yep, that's right.
This one is a slab. It's very beautiful. Tangerine Dreams, another one from Good Titrations out of Alaska.
Good titrations. Sweet expectation.
Good titrations.
Vibrate, and then shortly after that, it'll
There's
be
your
ready.
White's doing cartwheels.
You're making me laugh.
She's twerking, Wes.
Oh, you guys have not seen that, have you?
Not yet.
Yeah, well, just wait for the staff party.
I can't wait.
We'll twerk together, Mary.
Can we throw it now?
No.
Damn it.
No, because she's got to get all baked up over there.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, you doing it?
It's good to go.
Wow.
This is some Good Titrations shatter. This is from Fairbanks, Alaska, where they produce and process delicious cannabis concentrates.
Shatter.
Fairbanks.
I couldn't come up with that in my head right there.
Okay, there it
It's just a
goes.
slab. It's a beautiful little slab.
She's a real pro. Have you ever been to Alaska?
No, but I want to go.
She wants to go to Alaska, Wes. It's,
And Good Titrations has one of the first in the state of Alaska consumption lounges opening.
Nice.
So you can go up there and smoke weed legally.
And
going.
Wes, you
I
went up
wanna
there, and
go.
there was an ice sculpture park or something. What was that?
Ice sculptures. There's snow and ice everywhere,
Yeah,
so
it's like
they get really creative
It was
with
a
it.
ping pong table made out of ice.
Yes, there was.
That's cool.
Cray, cray.
That's
Yes.
really
China.
cool.
All right, we got to get back into it, man. I can't wait. Ending the cartel. Claudia, is that a possibility?
That's a very difficult question, right, to ask. But I guess the approach of Mexico, which is very different from Colombia, right? It could be, remember that right now Mexico is legalizing it on a recreational level because medicinal, it's already legal, right? But there's no rules and guidelines. Recreationally, yes, it might be able to wipe away the interest of the narcos because now it has to be very strictly regulated, right? So now with the next legalization, I mean, what we're talking about right now, which is for recreational, we're talking about these licenses: cultivation, transformation. Transformation is manufacturing, extraction, everything. Sale, which is anything point of sale, maybe dispensaries, clubs. Also remember there would be personal use and ability to cultivate their own plants at home. Marketing, storage, distribution, that's for sale, and then import, export, right? And we're talking about the recreational side right now, which will help also guidelines for the medicinal part, and also finally will save the industrial hemp industry.
Yeah,
So there's going to be a lot of rules that take a lot of money invested up front, and you don't get a lot of money back initially. And the narcos right now don't grow the best weed. Sorry, narcos.
What a shot.
Because they don't have to, because whatever they grow, they can sell. And they've been selling it illegally in, giant bales, so they don't have to package it. They don't have to brand it, market it, test it. They aren't paying good wages to their, drug mules. So I don't think there is a lot of incentive for them to grow weed legally. Do you think they're going to stop growing illegally? The U.S., we produce a lot of our own weed now, so we don't need weed from Mexico as much as we did. Just like California used to produce a lot of the black market weed that went around the East Coast. And as the East Coast has started legalizing, there's less demand for California or Mexico weed. Where's that weed going? Does it have a future?
I think that it's all about education. It's a demand and supply, right? Economic rules. So as long as the patient or the user, recreational user as well, knows better, then he or she will be able to choose better. And also in California, we've been used to using illegal marijuana, obviously, for many years. But we do, at this point, prefer to buy legally because it's more or less the same price and you know exactly what's inside, right?
Yeah.
With a general movement worldwide towards sustainability and a healthy living industry goes together.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the narcos aren't selling drugs to Mexicans or, people in their communities as much as they are exporting it. So they're not giving their local people drugs. They're not also sharing the wealth. And they're also making it more violent, obviously.
Right.
So it seems like if you're a happy Mexican citizen or Colombian citizen, you want to buy weed from someone legal versus the people who've kind of terrorized you or made your life less safe.
Absolutely.
Or support them for that matter, right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, in Colombia, we already saw that. Some of the mob money went legally into some of these companies because obviously it improves the country, tax revenues. And the regular citizen of these countries wants tax revenues to improve their social life, their infrastructure, everything, right? And plus, remember that not only Mexico is going to save above $200 million in enforcement laws, but also it will be able to suppress all the other, all the people and the regular citizens in the country that are against the mob and the narcos.
So in America, we legalized because we didn't want to be arrested anymore, by police officers. But it seems like now with Latin America, legalizing is going to free people from the cartels, from the violence, because if they don't have an incentive to sell drugs illegally, then the cartels kind of just naturally go away. They're not forcing them out with more violence. You know, it's not the military pushing them out. It's not the police pushing them out. It's simply taking away their money and their profit. And since so much of that comes from weed, it seems like the best way to take the power from those, you know, illegal organizations is to create legal, tax structured, funded ways to bring people weed, which we all want, and to use it to build roads instead of Pablo's next, you know, mega mansion. Yeah. Exactly.
Correct.
Zoo.
Yeah. You know, this is a very interesting subject because I come from Italy, right? So we have the mafia problem there as well. And we've had many foreign companies come and invest, you know, in the country in cultivation, mostly for CBD, obviously. They are not aware how the mafia works there, right? So we will see if the mob is able to work around these new regulations or not.
I guess to me, and maybe this is the American in me, but like the Italian mob is like suits and like a little class to it. Maybe it's the American Italian mob, but like the narcos, you know, of Latin America don't have as nice a reputation, I suppose. So I feel like when we hear, you know, stories out of Italy or stories out of New York, it's like scary, but it's classy scary, versus in Latin America, it's a lot of people getting murdered and worse.
And hung from overpasses by their toes or dismembered, where the Italians make the body disappear.
Right.
Do you think
New Yorkers, sorry.
Do you think the governments, do you think there's a will in the governmental organizations to push out that kind of illegal influence that's been there for so long?
Absolutely.
And do you think this is kind of the tool that might help spark a bigger revolution or a bigger change within, you know, the power struggles in these countries?
Yes. At the beginning, this was the reason why they wouldn't legalize it. And even Vincent Fox was against it until, you know, again, there was this moral issue of providing medicinal cannabis to patients and to people that really need it health-wise.
Vicente Fox was the president of Mexico and now a cannabis advocate.
Good. Correct. Was against legalization because for fear of the narcos. But, you know, but then he was also one of the first presidents that said we need to make a difference and change the regulation. So, but yes, definitely these new rules, specifically, as you can see, this is the one country that comes in with creating new rules for both medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis at the same time, probably because of what you said, trying to hamper the illegal trafficking.
And bring people medicine.
Correct.
From a moral standpoint, which is a beautiful thing. In the U.S., you know, we start with medical marijuana and it gets people to accept it. And then they're like, okay, you can quit pretending it's medicine now. We're going to call it legal and tax it. Because they want us to believe that it's just for recreational use and kind of push out the medicinal side. I guess from my perspective before the show, I didn't realize how dynamic the issue was, not just with Mexico, but with all of Latin America, because of so many forces at play. But it seems to me like it's a beautiful opportunity to, you know, grow a plant that helps people and heals people, and also heal the scars of, you know, these decades of the war on drugs and the impact that the narcos have had.
Exactly. And most of the countries in Latin America have this similar approach to that, right? The intention of suppressing, you know, the mob, but helping, you know, for the medicinal part, you know, their citizens. So Brazil, for example, is a very conservative country. The president comes from the military, will not allow anytime soon recreational cannabis or even cultivation in the country, or export or even import of any ingredients, but did recognize the medicinal benefits of cannabis, legalize it in medicinal way. I think a couple of years ago, they haven't done anything in terms of, you know, creating rules and regulations. They can only import. So now Brazil is becoming the biggest market for Colombia and the other countries, and of course Mexico, to export into. Way better than EU.
Sorry, I did a Where in the World about that.
Right.
Yeah, we had a clip about that. So far, Canada's domestic market for recreational licensed pot has really flopped. And companies like Canopy and Aurora have lost, tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars because there is an entrenched medical and personal use kind of gray market, grow your own kind of established culture in Canada. So they were all planning to grow weed in Canada and sell it to Brazil and sell it to Germany and the rest of the EU. And I guess from your perspective, is that sustainable? Because why would you grow weed in Canada to put it on a ship, or a plane to send it to the EU when the EU could grow cannabis and create their own jobs? And I guess my same thought goes to Brazil. It's like, well, don't Brazilians want to smoke Brazilian weed that's grown there, create the jobs and the infrastructure versus just empowering another multinational corporation to profit from them?
Absolutely. Brazil will, at some point, will have their own domestic market and cultivation. As I said, over 200 million people in Brazil, right? And they believe in the medicinal part. But because of the conservative nature of their mentality, it's not going to happen for the next few years. Okay, give it a few. So these few years will give the ability to Colombia to make money, right? Mexico is positioned to export anywhere else in the world. But then again, the domestic market, right, is important in Mexico and Brazil. Now, why Canada? Canada is an interesting situation because it's been the pioneer, right? It has the know-how, but domestic consumption is very limited. How many people in Canada?
Yeah,
right?
There's not many people up there.
And they already grow their own weed or have access
Not
to
only
it.
that, consider that Aurora last year produced, I heard this, don't quote me, but 97 times as much weed as much Europe wanted to order.
Wow.
So there is an oversupply, okay? At the end of the game, it's a demand and supply. There's an oversupply. Prices are going down. And we've always known that developing countries will be able eventually to produce and cultivate, just like any other agricultural products, better than Canada and even United States.
And we don't want like a colonial pot model. We don't want these, rich white companies or white countries, setting up colonial pot production and, pushing their products in and taking money out. I mean, that's the old world way of doing things. And it seems to me it's like, let's empower the people. Let's empower Latin America. Let's empower the EU and create, import-export opportunities, which I think is the future of weed. Because I want to be able to smoke some Brazilian weed on Monday and some Mexican weed on Tuesday and get some Kentucky weed to end my week. But I also believe in the right to create that infrastructure and the jobs and the impact locally. Exactly. And I think especially for Latin America, bringing people out of poverty, bringing these countries out of the kind of quagmire of being in a weird cohabitated relationship with the narcos and saying, okay, we're gonna push those folks out. We're gonna create our own jobs, create our own opportunities, make our own drugs.
Yeah,
I think that makes more sense, and I hope that is the future, and it's not just a bunch of rich Canadian companies exporting weed to other countries, colonial style.
Exactly, and this is also why just you touched on the subject. Europe, same thing, right? So Colombia was banking on the opportunity of selling to Europe, and so actually also Canada. But now what's going on in Europe? They're producing their own weed, right? In Spain, in Portugal, in Netherlands. Actually, each country has their own rules and decriminalized it, or it's at least legal in a medicinal way. Of course, some of the countries, such as Italy, still needs rules and regulations for the THC part, but up to Ukraine decriminalized cannabis.
Wow.
So why would you import cannabis from Colombia or, other southern Latin American countries into Europe when you have the proximity of Portugal, Spain, and also there's job-related issues, right?
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's the global commerce side of cannabis that's going to be emerging over the next 10 to 20 years is, alcohol is a good way to kind of cross compare. You might want vodka from Russia or, a sake from Japan or a Kentucky bourbon, and those go all over the world. But most alcohol is produced locally and consumed locally. Because why would you need average things, sent all over the world? It just doesn't make sense. And I think the same for cannabis. You might want a specialty good that comes from Latin America to the EU or from Canada to Mexico. But in terms of just, your everyday product, you want to support a local company. And I think these countries are going to want that infrastructure to support their tax dollars, their systems, build their roads and their schools versus giving all that money to another country, especially one that's more wealthy.
Exactly. I agree. Absolutely.
All right, Claudia, lovely to have you. But first, before you go, it's time to play California Man.
California?
California.
California?
From the deserts to the surf breaks. From the beaches to the border. This is California Man. Dude.
So usually we play a game called Florida Man, but since you flew all the way from Los Angeles and you live in California, this time it's California Man. Tell me which headline is true.
So you're going to hear all three, and then you're going to let us know which one you think is real.
Oh my God. Okay.
Number 1, California man deemed radioactive by doctors after week-long sunbathing vacation on the grounds of the San Onofre power plant in San Clemente. Number 2, California man considered legally blind by officials after publicly claiming 100,000th Instagram post after not leaving his residence for 420 consecutive days. And number 3, California man arrested after attempting to bury wife alive at the beach.
Oh, I think the third one is
That is correct. The woman escaped and called authorities, and her 23-year-old husband is being charged with attempted murder, assault, causing great bodily injury, domestic violence, false imprisonment, and big shocker here, parole violation.
Oh, my goodness.
Good job. You're not insulted, right? 'Cause you're not from
I
California.
watched. No, don't worry. I watched too much Forensic Files, I guess.
Forensic Files. Claudia, where can we find you on social media?
Right. So social media. I gotta change my name again. Just Claudia.delamora.
Delamora.
Yes, we
It's so lovely to have you on Leaf Love. Thank you so very much.
You're very smart.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, me
Thank
too.
you.
Wow.
Wes, I think you met your match this time, brother.
Yeah, wow.
Hey, next week we'll be talking about coming out of quarantine.
Coming out.
Download this and all Leaf Life episodes at leafmagazines.com. You can listen to all Leaf Life podcast shows on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and now check out our videos at our YouTube channel. Also, please find us on Instagram at Leaf Life Podcast. Now here comes another episode of Stony Baloney, which is also available at leafmagazines.com. And please be kind to animals.
Your hosts for Leaf Life are Mike Ricker and Wes Abney. Leaf Life is produced by Mike Daly. Some of the music heard is provided by purple-planet.com. Every bit of cannabis you use is female, so please respect the ladies.
Leaf Life is brought to you by Leaf Nation, featuring Alaska Leaf, Oregon Leaf, Northwest Leaf, Northeast Leaf, Maryland Leaf, Amsterdam Leaf, and California Leaf. On the shelf now in your local retailer.
Please stay tuned now for this week's edition of Stony Baloney by Mike Ricker.
Stony Baloney by Mike Ricker.
Apathy is bliss. There is an art form to truly not giving a shit. But unless you're born with a personality laser etched with self-entitlement, it is something that takes experience to perfect. Like getting to the point of absolutely caring less about what the hell happens in any given situation is a mindset that is acquired only through countless failures, equating to a battle-worn callousness. They say that Buddhist monks will meditate in the Himalayan mountains for years in the attempts to achieve that flash of a moment where the oneness of energy is understood to be congruent, cracking the code to enlightenment, where all things coalesce into perfect, harmonious truism. A similar journey on a different spectrum, it could be said, is the attainment in the art of not giving a flying fuck. But to get to this place of utter sanctity, you must have really cared at some point. Deeply, in fact. Because the absolute indifference is generally a trait that transcends only after an era of deep consideration until repeated disappointments crack the id, resulting in an air of futility that can never be affected. At this point, emotions have been deduced into arithmetic, a mindset where all optimism, pessimism too, becomes anesthetized. This is a state called pure apathy, where the individual floats in a sort of black and white purgatory, an area of unflappable tranquility, a weightless state of utter peace. It is a quiet place when devoid of concern, where the crying of children, the beckoning of lustful tantalization, and the urgency of duties falls on deaf ears, only to be interrupted by a sense of hunger or a need for sleep. Some will call it absolute self-absorption, narcissistic, but it doesn't matter because they are really pleased for your attention that will never be satisfied unless it fulfills some rudimentary purpose. By the way, this affliction will never befall a stoner.
Stony baloney.